Oh, it's kind of scared me there for a second. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition joining us here as we are coming to you from the field here at Lucas Oil Stadium as the Big Ten Media Days for 2021 kickoff. Dustin, is the first time I said we've gotten to do this in 2 years. Yes, people. It is. I mean, there's people everywhere. We get to talk to the coaches face to face. Other than running in to them someplace in town, there's been none of that. Players and all that. They seem excited to be out here. They're walking around. I've seen Coach Bleem already, Fleck. Those guys are out and about. It's just fun getting out into this atmosphere.
Yeah, and after everything we had to deal with 2020 and COVID and all that, and just being able to have these interactions with players, with coaches, it's an awesome atmosphere already. And I got to tell you right now, we're about 30 yards away. This is the closest I've ever been to an end zone scoring a touchdown. So I'm excited just to be here. It's fun to be back after we didn't have this last year, doing it all virtually.
Yeah, security to the rest of because you're a Pacer, is that right?
Oh yeah, that's probably true. Yep, I wasn't wearing any of my bright red
your
Tour de France gear. Exactly.
Yeah. But very cool doing this here. This is like they do it at the Super Bowl. This is how they should always do it from now on.
I agree.
The hotel thing, man, ballrooms are out. Football. Why would they not do it this way? It's how they do the Super Bowl, and it works. It's been doing it for years, and it's perfectly. And everything is you've got wide open spaces here. It's perfect, and I think it should move to Indianapolis, and it should be permanently here. They start the season here, and you end the season here. You crown a champion in December, and that's going to be a great season to see where we get to. On the west side, I have no idea. I mean, I can guess like everybody else, Wisconsin, Iowa, because everyone's going to say those two teams, but I don't know how good Iowa really is. I know they're going to be solid because they always are. Wisconsin's going to be probably solid. They always are. But I don't know of any of those teams that are supposed to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be what you said. All eyeballs are going to be on Wisconsin. They're going to be on Iowa. I think you got to pay attention to Minnesota this year. I think they're going to have probably one of the most explosive offenses in the Big Ten this year. You talk about Ohio State. We talk about Indiana all the time, obviously. But they'll be right up there in that category. I think when you look at some of the other teams in the West, Purdue's looking to bounce back after 2 down years. Northwestern just won the Big Ten 2 times in the last 3 seasons, so you can never count them out. What we're going to see from Nebraska, they have their most veteran team under Scott Frost in his 4 seasons. So, and then Brett Bielema, obviously, he's bringing a little rejuvenation. He's got over 20 super seniors, I believe. So, the West is a wide open race. Any given Saturday, one team can beat another team. Typically we talk about the Big Ten East and the powers have kind of separated themselves. This year it's going to be Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana has worked their way into that conversation, in my opinion. But the West, you're right. Who knows? It could be any of 4 teams. Wisconsin and Iowa will be the favorite, but I think you got to put Minnesota and Northwestern in that conversation as well.
How much pressure's on DJ Fleck? I talked about him earlier. It's his 5th season. 4th season. He elevated the program pretty quickly, but they seem to have leveled off. To me, I mean, I don't cover them obviously, other than Big Ten, but it just seems like they've kind of leveled off a little bit.
Well, first of all, I think you were right this season. I think I messed up there. But when you think about what happened last season, they had their 2 best offensive linemen opt out. They had their best defensive players from the 2019 season didn't return. But what they have returning now is they have Boye Mafe on the defensive line. They have Mariano Sori-Marin at linebacker and Coney Durant in the secondary. So you have your best player returning at all 3 levels of the game. So I think their defense is going to be better. It's still a huge question mark to me. But when you look at Mohamed Ibrahim rushing for over 1,000 yards, nearly 1,100 in 7 games last year, 15 touchdowns, and they get their 2 best offensive linemen back, that's why I have a lot of hope and optimism for Minnesota this year. I'm not saying they'll be 11-2, but I think they're going to be a tough out, and I think they can win 8-9 games this season.
They could be one of the favorites to win that division,
yeah,
depending on how things go. And the fact that we're sitting here talking about wide open offenses in the Big Ten, first of all, that's hilarious. And Indiana's one of those,
yes,
and Minnesota is one of those. It's mind-boggling. And then you got Purdue, Jeff Fromm. They're not, but that's how he runs. If these offenses were all clicking, this is not your grandpa's Big Ten offensively. I mean, it has changed. You look at Indiana, they bring all these players from Florida. You're bringing up speed. you're bringing up skill players, and the Big Ten was known as a running, sluggish, 3 yards in a cloud of dust for so long, and Ohio State's changing that. But you have to keep up. I mean, and that's Indiana's elevated. I think they've done as good a job as anybody as adding critical pieces around the units. Of course, I've found it more than anyone else. But you look at everything; they've added the pieces. What have they not added that they need?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you look at now is Indiana has the skill position players. Indiana has kind of had underrated skill position players over the last 20 years. They've always had good guys. We've talked about Tevin Coleman. We've talked about guys like Nick Westbrook. They've always had those guys. Where they've struggled has been on the offensive and defensive line. They can't get those big bodies up there. They struggle up front. And I think that's what you're starting to see Tom Allen address. We talked about the flashy linebacker, the 4-star and 5-star guys who are keeping Indiana in the top 5, top 10 of their recruiting lists. And so I think all that Indiana's really missing now is stronger offensive line play. And if they get that addressed and get that corrected, they're going to be a continual team. I mean, that's why Wisconsin and Iowa, year in, year out, are so good. You know that they're going to go to a bowl game. You know that they're going to be contending at the top of their division. And it's because they're so good along the offensive line. So if Indiana can start to recruit those type of players on the offensive line that they're getting at the skill position players and develop that talent, they're going to be a tough out. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the offense has worked so well. They struggled in the running game, and you see that kind of throughout the course of a season. That's why the ground they haven't been quite as efficient as you'd like to see, because they just don't have the depth on the offensive line that some of these other teams have. And so I think when you address that, that's what's going to make Indiana more sustainable. And I think Tom Allen's done a good job of that so far.
2 days ago, they get another commitment from Philip Dunham, safety out of Miami. Not a high-profile kid, but another Florida get, which just adds to that, because it's who does he know? That goes the Taiwan Mullen thing. It just spreads. That continues to spread their recruiting base there. Today, a decision is coming with Joe Strickland. That I've said it, I think, because he's announcing today. It's not a coincidence with Big Ten Media Day starting, that it's got to be Indiana or Purdue. I would think. And with Brom and Coach Allen both speaking tomorrow, one of those guys are going to be happy, and one's not. And then I went on another one. I can't see him picking Purdue over Indiana. It's just because of the programs are just – Indiana is trending up, and there's no denying that. And it's just been elevated in every way, and I would be surprised. Actually, the bigger thing is the movement that I keep calling now. There was a deal a few years ago in basketball with Christian Watford. They called it the movement. Well, to me, I was talking to Matt earlier, this is a movement. You've got all these 4-star in-state players that have come to Indiana now, and then they're trying to pull this last one in. That is a movement. That is Indiana didn't even hardly get 4 stars. Now you're getting your own 4 stars, and they're trying to pull the last good player in. That is a movement, and that is another key to Indiana elevating their recruiting right here at home.
Right, and I think the big thing is you mentioned Purdue and Indiana on different trajectories. It's kind of been really interesting. Jeff Brom got off to a hot start and goes 6-6, 7-6, getting to a bowl game after Purdue
beat Ohio State
at the bottom of the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State.
About 3 touchdowns, wasn't it?
Their recruiting had been top 25, top 30, depending on what network you're looking at. And then the past couple of years, been down in the record and in the recruiting rankings. And then you look at Indiana, kind of a little bit the opposite. Indiana started out, they weren't bad, 5-7, but couldn't quite get over that hump. Had some close losses to teams like Michigan, Ohio State, had some tough losses against Purdue, the old Oak and Bucket game for a couple of years there, determined bowl eligibility. But ever since that 8-5 season, you've seen Indiana's recruiting skyrocket. And so there's a lot of momentum right now. And Purdue, when you're top in-state contender, I mean, Purdue and Indiana are competing with Notre Dame right now. But when you're starting to win those recruiting battles, these were the kids that Jeff Brom was getting 2-3 years ago, and Tom Allen's starting to get those kids now. So that's why you see the trajectory, and that's why there's more optimism about Indiana football than there is Purdue. And it's very rare when that's been the case.
The one thing that surprised me about Purdue is, and Jeff, they've not really recruited a good quarterback. I mean, a good quarterback. That is Jeff Brom. That's what he's all about. He was a good quarterback. He was a tough quarterback, a smart quarterback. He's a good coach. I mean, I like him as a person. But they have not. Man, you had David Bell, you had Rondell Moore, but you didn't have a quarterback. Indiana's got a room full of them right now.
Yep.
They've got a room full of quarterbacks that could potentially all start at Purdue, I think. At least 3 of them. Tuttle, Penix, of course, and I don't know if McCullough's there yet because I don't know what the training he's been through, but I guarantee you'd like to have him.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think what's interesting, we talk about Tom Allen. Some of the part of recruiting is you want to get the kids who have the right attitude, who have the right mindset, who fit your system. And so part of me wonders if Jeff Brom is looking more about the attitude or the mechanics, something more so than the 4 and the 5-star ranking, or who's evaluating it. Because you're right, they haven't had a great quarterback, but there's never been really a time when you say, Purdue's quarterback play is off. It's not been great, but it hasn't been the reason they've lost games. The reason they've lost games is because of their defense. And so they've had no trouble getting the ball in the hands of Rondale Moore, David Bell, some of the other receivers that they've had over the past couple of seasons. But it is interesting that you don't see more of the 4-star guys saying, you know what, we're going to throw the ball around the field 100 times a game. That's the kind of offense I want to fit into. We'll see what happens. They've got I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now, but they do have a 4-star guy coming in. He might challenge for the starting job right away. Jeff Brum's a great developer of quarterback talent, so maybe he doesn't put as much emphasis on getting the 4 and 5-star guys at that position, but it has been very interesting to see. I would say Indiana's out-recruited them in terms of overall quarterback talent the last couple of seasons.
Absolutely. And how funny is it that how often do we see when the head coach is an offensive-minded coach, their defense is not good? Think of Kevin Wilson, trying to win games 48-46, that kind of stuff. You can't do that. That's not sustaining. That's living on a wing and a prayer. And those teams are going to be middling teams. And you're right. Indiana was fortunate in that Tom Allen secured the defense before he became the head coach. And he had it going in the right direction because at first under Kevin Wilson, it was the same thing. It was, Rutgers, they gave up 3 touchdowns in the second half game 5 years ago or something. I'm like, are you kidding me? At home, no less, in the fourth quarter. But, yeah, trust me, the pain, all that stuff, I never forget any of that stuff. But, man, it's going to be fun. Hopefully you can stop back by tomorrow. We have Tom Allen on in the morning right off the bat, 9. You're welcome to join us. The players with Jeff Brom will be here at 9:40 of it for third break. So just gonna have fun.
I was able to sneak in past security today, so if I'm able to do it again tomorrow, I'll be here and we'll have some fun again.
Yeah, I don't have my credential yet. I've been. Your chair is actually sitting on the temporary credential that I was able to get from somebody down the hallway. But
have it wrinkled up in your pocket.
Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat as he always does. We're coming to you live from the Big Ten Media Football Days here from the field at Lucas Oil Stadium. Back with more after this.